Hello, welcome to the channel. I'm Matthew Millais Gray, and I thought I would just talk about something else that has come onto my mind that slightly differs from the normal things that I have been discussing, but it is an important concern. And it is a concern about when a person makes an investment into a career and faces not just one disappointment, but disappointment after disappointment after disappointment after disappointment after disappointment after disappointment after disappointment. I think we get the point. Now, I remember a couple of branch committee members talking to me about their disappointments. And this was because clearly they had to give me bad news. I hadn't said I was disappointed, but they made the assumption for me that I was disappointed. I am disappointed now, and I'll tell you why. Because when a person grows up within a society, a religious society, it might be a tribe, it might be a country, it might be a culture. When there are promises that are quietly dropped when contributions are made by a person within that society and they meet all the expectations, all the checkboxes, and then the recognition is delayed or withheld and framed as a failing at humility if one happens to even hint or show in their face disappointment. This, again, is spiritual abuse. And it's not something I am often hearing about. I ask persons that I believe are wise because I've known that when I look at myself, I say there is some serious deficiencies, or I recognize intuitively that there are serious deficiencies when I identify promises that are not kept, and I see it as something that shouldn't actually be left, but realize that there's complex human public relations in being able to tactfully approach such a subject without coming across as egotistical or as complaining or shutting down the listener. So how does one broach such a subject in a high control religion, or even just with people in general? What if we feel that we don't possess the life skills necessary to be able to tackle such a subject? To say, look, I feel that there is a promise that is owing. I feel that there is something I was told I would get, whether it's being fed, whether it's being clothed, whether it's having accommodation or medical care or support. What's happening? What's happening? Am I allowed to even ask such a question? Am I allowed to ask about those promises? Or, as a Jehovah's Witness, you should never expect any kind of reward except death. That is your reward. Die. There was a circuit overseer friend of mine who had put in a lifetime of work. In fact, there were two circuit overseer friends I can think of. And when their assignments, now I'll say that they were old school. when their assignments were terminated, the one circuit overseer went back to secular work, whereas they should have retired their age, but they went back to work. And they went back to work for somebody who was a Bible student from our family, and the Bible student offered them employment. Not the organization. And I remember there was something seeded within the gossip culture that, oh, this person was very humble and turned down support from the organization. Really? Do we know that? Is that what happened? I happen to know that circuit overseer. And something doesn't tally in the gossip culture. I've noticed that the gossip culture gets used to seed certain stories when there is a public relations sensitivity that isn't quite going their way. Anyway, I admired the humility of this circuit overseer. They'd worked district work, had worked as a coordinator. Ah, yes, I enjoyed this person. I enjoyed their humility. And I'm glad I was trained by that person. The other circuit overseer I can think of came off the circuit work. And when we say came off, I wonder if they were pushed off. Because when we say came off, it gets presented as, oh, this person voluntarily came off. And really, these stories, this narrative, it can be polar opposites to the reality. Anyway, this circuit overseer, wife dies, they went into secular work, and I remember they worked with me. And they worked as what you could say in doing odd jobs. They said, right, I'll do labor. Remember, this is an elderly person going back into work. And so I would drive them around town. We would do jobs together. And he felt good, I suppose, that he was showing me or mentoring me what you do so that you can be like Apostle Paul. You don't have to be an unnecessary burden. And he did these very low paying odd jobs. Until, of course, he couldn't sustain it, and then his daughter looked after him. And I remember images of him curled up with a cat in a fetal position and dying. No wealth, no room at Bethel, just being cared for by his daughter, who had not gone into special service, who was kind of viewed as the renegade, but yet here she was looking after her father, you know, as a Christian should. Another story, coordinator. And remember, this coordinator didn't want to be a burden. And they tried to look after themselves. Thankfully, a Bethel in another land took them in. But I can think of more sad stories than I can think of good stories, where persons were promised houses, accommodation, being cared for by the most powerful person in the universe, or his peoples who should be set apart as different from any government on this planet. Liechtenstein, Switzerland. I don't know, think of some country whereby you could say the government looks after its people, provides a dole, provides a means to look after its elderly, to look after persons who have worked for that government. Because there is something seriously wrong with a situation where persons are working for the best government the planet has ever seen, where it is purchasing $1 million TVs and producing Jesus land, and producing films and museums. But its circuit overseer, who has worked his entire lifetime with his faithful wife, is curled up in a fetal position in a cot in his supposed wayward daughter's tiny little flat. And so, yes, another emotional presentation, because I feel I do not have the skills to be able to present this information in a way that is palatable. And so I would normally ask persons who are eloquent, who have the ability to put an important message across without upsetting people too much or closing down the receptive ability in the audience. And so I suppose this thing is about disappointments. And yes, we want to be able to say, well, what's the silver lining? How do we get past this? Maybe it's a good job that we recognize that there's all these abuses. But where does one pick up the pieces if you say, well, I have sacrificed absolutely everything, burned my bridges, and somewhat stuck, not just disappointed, but stuck practically as to where to go next. Some persons have a higher education to fall back on, but hey, that was not allowed in times past. So I think what I'm describing is the reality of a situation for those that have worked very, very hard for what they believed was God's kingdom, manifested on earth in an organization, a religious organization that has plush Bethels, plush lawns, plush accommodation, plush travel, plush facilities for medical, plush facilities to be looked after, fed, housed. And so is it a proper healthy assertiveness to ask these kind of questions? To say, well, am I foregoing humility by saying, I think there is something wrong with this? I want to raise this issue. Because an organization that claims to be the most superior thing the planet has ever seen, if it cannot look after its own people, how do we reconcile this? Is it our own weakness to make this question? Is Matt Gray wrong raising this? Is Matt Gray egotistical raising this? Or is it deeply human? Is it something thoughtful? Because I have heard spiritually serious people struggle with this. I've heard it recently. And so, yes, I have deviated in my usual discussions to talk about something else, about those who've lived in systems where, yes, humility was demanded while recognition was withheld. And I say this because in Jehovah's Witness Society, when persons get up to give a talk, say, for instance, on a convention, you might have noticed, or those that are in the culture may have noticed, that they announce years of full-time service as credibility, as recognition. Because you're supposed to stop and say, oh, this person knows what they're talking about. There's some kind of credential behind them. And so the psychology is, I guess, by raising this, or those that raise it, that you are not failing at humility. You're not. You are reacting to a pattern when somebody consistently promises something that they are not fulfilling. Consistently. Over and over again. Promises are quietly dropped. Contributions are unseen. They're told, well, God sees this. But yet, for others, you look at their qualifications, say, for instance, on the electronic system, like Hub, and you see all these amazing, glowing qualifications. There was one young elder in circuit work. I took a look at their qualifications before I was unceremoniously booted off the system, and I have never seen anything like it. And I'm going to say, for such a lazy, self-righteous, egotistical, awful character. Really. Service committee had seen this person and went, oh, we just don't want to touch this person. But their qualifications were just outstanding. I'd worked with them. Did not see these wonderful qualifications. And I just so happened to, when I looked at their qualifications, and it was like pages, it was like nauseating for me, for whatever mess in my head is there. I just looked at this and went, what? Where is this guy getting qualified? There's stuff here I've never even seen, you know. And I know he's not busy. I know he's not. He looks it sort of, because he pronounces it to the world. And I just so happened to think, oh, okay, well, this is a big deal, this qualification. Let me go and take a look at mine. I'm sure I've accumulated a tremendous amount over the years. My decades of ministry was 5 years of full-time service. And I looked at this and I went, what's happened here? Doesn't look like I've done anything. And it brought to my mind what one circuit overseer said to me. He says, why aren't you reaching out? And I said to him, well, what more do you want done? Special pioneering, out in the bush, building own accommodation, growing own crops, surviving death threats, harassment of all kinds of nature, getting arrested in countries, escaping. I mean, it sounds like, though not exactly, but it sounds parallel to the Apostle Paul, what Paul faced in their service. And I can say in my own service, yeah, I was sleeping in different beds because of death threats and, you know, this extreme living. But I was saying, okay, well, I'm in the spiritual war. I'm conditioned to live in the spiritual war. But it amazed me that decades of full-time service just was counted as nothing. 5 years and no commentary. Nothing about Bethel, nothing about special pioneering. And I started looking at others and going, well, this one's not really asserting themselves. Sure, incredible qualifications. In fact, there was one chap, I remember. They were dating a girl for ages, and the brothers used to compensate for them, but he never worked, really. He's just loitering around on his cell phone to his girlfriend all the time. And you would find him asleep in one of the heavy machines like a cat or a skid steer. You just find him asleep in the bucket. People would laugh about it. And he was called to service desk. And I remember the speech that Oversight gave us. They said, if you too work hard, you will see that Jehovah opens up the floodgates of privileges. And we are very proud to say that this person is now one of the members of Service Desk. And this was amazing, because not just for a year was this individual dating, but for a year afterwards, they now said, oh, I'm now married and I need a year off. And so they just did the same thing they always did. Cruised through, had others compensating for them. But this was the peak, pinnacle of what a volunteer should be in Jehovah's Witnesses, to receive privileges. And so, Matt, yes, you sound like you're bleating. You sound like you are butt sore. Yeah. Shouldn't I be? Shouldn't I be butt sore about this? I heard somebody recently talking about it, and it's been staying with me. And I realized today, yeah, I'm butt sore. But I want to be able to put this into the right kind of perspective when there are no explanations satisfactorily given about promises that along the way just we're not materializing. And you can say, oh, well, but that's discipline, Matt. You've been disciplined for not playing ball. No, this has been happening for many, many years. And so among Jehovah's Witnesses, the emotional system learns to scan for disappointment, because you're supposed to be grateful. So supposed to be grateful irrespective of whatever happens. So I'm not going to say that this is weakness, because putting it into the correct perspective, it is conditioning. Please tell me I'm wrong. Please give me the antithesis. Because among Jehovah's Witnesses in many high control environments, people are taught, suppress your own needs, remain silent when overlooked, by all means overfunction, work for 3 congregations a week, 3 language groups a week, burn out, have, 2 to 3 hours sleep, you'll sleep when you die, that's what you're told. Accept blame when systems fail, even if it's somebody else that's done it. Accept it, because you say that, you take the blame for others. Interpret your own rightful feelings as pride, negative pride. And so it psychologically creates this inner conflict. Oh, I want to be gracious when talking about these kind of things. I want to use the right words and not flounder around when discussing this, because I want to be seen. Look at how this overseer here who is getting ahead, and I look at their qualifications and I go, I'd like to have those qualifications. Where's the guidance? I'd like the acknowledgement. Because we're told that the worker is deserving of their food. That's what we're told. We're told nobody leaves houses or mother or father for my sake who doesn't get this in this system and in the system to come. But prior to the big derailment, long before 2025, sorry. And yeah, I suppose 2015, long before that. It was expected that if a person was to show humility when they are disappointed, they must pretend not to feel hurt. They must accept broken promises silently, as yes, indeed, God doing this. To believe that one's own contributions, one's own hard work does not deserve recognition, to actually desire what that circuit overseer has with all of these qualifications that, excuse me, in my opinion, a lot of them are made up. Just nonsense. Really nonsense. They can say, oh no, but they do this, they do this. No, they've walked into these titles because in reality, the person's playing golf. That's what they do. That's their ministry. That's their work. And I exaggerated. Yes. Are they doing some shepherding? Sure, they're doing some. But they are not truly working. Not truly working as is demanded from many others. And so it is expected to absorb disappointment from many as moral duty, as carrying others' forgetfulness as your torture stake. This is what it is to be a Christian, folks. So that is not humility. I'm going to say that because it is looking more like enforced invisibility. And so these kind of systems, like Jehovah's Witnesses, the weeds, the weed class, they blur what real humility is. Real humility, proper healthy psychology is knowing your worth without demanding spotlight. You got that? Challenge me. Proper humility is knowing one's worth with healthy confidence without demanding spotlight. It's allowing disappointment without it defining you. And it is also about communicating gently when something matters. Not remaining silent. It means knowing how to communicate about it. Yes, we respect others' limitations. Yes, we stay open-hearted when mistakes happen. But know that you have done things right when, yes, you have delivered your commitment properly, you've worked diligently and sincerely, you respond with gratitude, you check in politely and gently. That is the mature, balanced, spiritual humility that really is required. So recognition or not, persons who are in these situations do well to act with integrity. Now I'm going to say that in this day and age, we actually have some really great facilities at our disposal. AI looks at language and it is trained with some kind of ethics program. So it's very good in providing an AI-human intersection. It's almost like consulting a wise mentor because it's made up of languages and information that has come from wise mentors. It's come from all sorts of different persons. And so, yes, you can train it to answer in some very profound ways. So you can say, well, I'm lacking the words. How do I take these feelings which are a mess and that sound egotistical and I'm just getting into trouble here? How do I take it and put it in such a way that I'm able to now talk about some of these disappointments in a way that sounds like I've been mentored properly, that I've had proper counseling direction, that I've got good diplomacy, that I intuitively recognize that, yes, I might not be talking in such a way that is the best, but now I am able to look at, AI, or look at the internet, or look at a vast repository of deep thinkers psychologists, diplomats, spiritual writers, persons who've undergone many conflicts. Maybe they've resolved things. Maybe they haven't. But you've got experts, you've got public relations coaches, life coaches, poets, profound ones, profound artists, sincere humans who are trying to express kindness in an unjust situation, in a situation where there are broken promises. And so when we come across a situation that requires tact, psychology, diplomacy, compassion, and we might even feel that within us we have this rage that's building up, or righteous indignation, let's put it that way, because that's, we would hope, controlled. Recognize that yes, our intuition is working. Recognize that we have healthy self-awareness. And recognize that yes, we have ethics and we have humility, and that we, by asking the questions, it's showing that we're able to check ourselves. And so yes, you can go to AI now and you can say, well, can it help with language scaffolding? Can it help with presenting things in a way? Whereas ordinarily, if we had just gone off the cuff in expressing our feelings, we would have spiraled out of control or been derailed because, man, it just doesn't sound good. So yes, AI helps us with precise phrasing. It helps us with becoming more aligned with our values, with our intent, and you can discuss it. So I like AI. I like AI for that, in the form that it can be more solution orientated or oriented in being able to get our feelings across, or our sense of ethics across. And so you can't say, well, oh, well, that's cheating using AI. Yeah, you can cheat with AI, or you can say, well, that is now the means to be able to learn or to be able to discuss things in such a way that, yes, we can continue steering. AI is an instrument panel in a way. It's a way of being able to consult when we couldn't have access to great minds to be able to consult. And so in practice, especially in a healthier environment than a terrible high control situation ruled by weeds, right? And then some might say to me, Matt, you don't say this is weeds. The whole thing was bad to begin with. And I say, I respect that viewpoint. I am trying merely to use, within the religion, I'm trying to use a terminology that shows that there is a problem that is even prophesied. So I'm trying to use that framework to highlight the problems. And so with practice, especially in healthier environments or with AI that's designed to talk to a vast cross-section of peoples and is not narrow like in a situation like JW with very high controlled language, where there's this assertive humility, assertive expectations. It starts to become more natural so that we can heal, so that we can communicate our emotional, spiritual foundation and our ethics and what we sense. This pattern of sensing, yes, something's not right when there is an injustice. It's not weakness. It's actually a miracle that persons have survived to talk about it. I heard a person discussing their life experience, and they remained very gentle. They remained very dignified. They captured my attention as they spoke, because people who were raised in an authoritarian spiritual structure where things have gone wrong, it often swings between wanting to be invisible to avoid criticism and wanting to be recognized so that you can feel seen after years of dismissals. You're not a broken person. Maybe I should say I'm not a broken person, but I'm saying you and I, we're not lacking. We're not lacking validation. When we have been disappointed over and over, it helps to know that to feel disappointed is human. To want acknowledgement is rightfully human. To desire follow through on promises is rightfully human. To ask gently for clarity or the means to make a correction, to value work that's been done, does not contradict humility. Not true humility. Doesn't contradict it. So we might need to tap into a truth that we may need permission to believe. Persons who spend decades in a system that punishes brilliance or independence and spiritual depth, you need permission. I need permission. When a person now is booted out and is in a world where one's voice is allowed to exist, you don't have to shrink to be holy. One doesn't have to be erased to be humble. We don't have to suffer disappointment after disappointment silently to be dignified. And so learning to be a person again is very important. It's not a role, it's not a servant of an institution. I wanted to say intuition. Intuition's shaped by institution. You're a person. And so, yeah, a lot of persons need help building language about the boundaries, to regain confidence, not to have an overinflation that just turns persons away, or if we have a video played back of ourselves, we just can't bear to watch it, listen to it. So yeah, it is important to have practice of healthy assertion in communication, to understand where a harmful high control environment had actually conditioned us. I heard a person say that survivors of that have sunburn, and I like that expression. I said, yeah, we all carry our sunburn, even if you've gone for psychological help, can still be affected in all sorts of ways. And so, yes, it's a work in progress to keep building a new inner model of humility and self-worth. To navigate interpersonal or public relations dilemmas with grace. To integrate, I mentioned artificial intelligence guidance because it's a great tool. It's a two-edged sword. It can be really bad and it can be really good. Just like fire. Fire can burn, or it can cook your meal, or it can keep you warm. So, integrating artificial intelligence guidance without losing our agency is important, because we might feel, oh, well, there is a way that we could feel that we're getting lazier. Well, don't get lazy. If you see that, trust that intuition and don't get lazy. Put in the countermeasures. Yeah. So I think I mentioned my going to my qualifications, and I saw my qualifications had been erased systematically long before there was any basic major liability or alleged liability in the organization that I had pointed out. So yeah, that erasure, not cool. And I looked at it and I thought, well, in how many other situations is that happening? How many other persons are facing the same kind of thing? Especially if they hadn't sinned. hadn't done anything wrong, had a clear conscience, legitimately, not just fooling themselves. I'm talking about a legitimately clear conscience. While those in power positions had worked far, far less than those with exemplary records, genuine records. Yeah, it's amazing to live through. It's amazing that you can't even access those records, things that you've earned. It's incredible. So yeah, I take pause because there's so many things where you look at promises of the future, rewards. I want to say if you had paid into a government, said, look, there is my retirement, there's my pension, and that government failed to pay that pension, which has happened in governments, are you expected just to walk away from that? People fight. People fight over that. And they go to courts and they settle these things. So in the Jehovah's Witness culture, which has been allowed to be called a public benefits organization, not for profits, that's exactly what's happened. Police and enforcement and society, it either just laughs or it dismisses it. It says, well, what do you expect? That's why we aren't Jehovah's Witnesses. You coming to preach to us about this? You guys can't even get it right among your own people. It is a colossal embarrassment. How can persons go from door to door saying this is the best life ever, when that organization with its weed class ruling things has institutional erasure going on? And they don't intend to fix it, but they should. They're hoping some government's going to subsidize or intervene, or families going to intervene, friends are going to intervene, or some kind of person that's outside just has pity and says, look, I'm going to step in and I'm just going to rescue you because I can see this is unjust and I want to do something just to help you because I can see, and I don't expect any sort of payment. I'm just going to come in just for being a good human, because I can identify one of the deepest spiritual betrayals a person can ever experience, and it's happened with you. You can't pay back. Don't expect it. In fact, you don't even know my name. How about that? So let's reflect back on what's being discussed here. Clearly, truthfully. Because what happens to many persons, and I include myself, that's why I'm raising this. It's not just about, oh, Matt Gray, man, another bleak story. There are so many persons who've experienced this, who've experienced real hurt, real serious, psychologically devastating, physically devastating consequences. And a lot of the time, it's trivialized. It's trivialized by that organization. It's weeds. And it's trivialized by persons who are not in the know. Because from a young age, if you're born in, persons are taught a lifelong spiritual career existed. They're told this is a career. Persons on the outside say that's not a career. What are you thinking? No, it's not a career. Inside, you are told it is the best career you can ever have. And then that system erases it. And so for decades, a person is told, oh, your record matters. Your service is your spiritual resume. Your future privileges depend on documented loyalty. Your standing is cumulative. And you see it. You see it in like That circuit overseer's glowing qualifications on the hub or on the electronic system. The sacrifices that build a legacy, and persons believe in them. I believed in them. I built a life around those promises in absolute good faith right to the very end, until it was just impossible to move because of the lack of safety, because of the dangers, because of the trauma. You get a group of local elders. Where have they come from? Well, you've got 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, no higher moral ground, far less experience. They can just come along and validate decades of work, and the branch can go, oh, yeah, we have to support that. Oh, we're just going to erase your identity. And they tell you, oh, it's so hard for us. It's so, do you know, I prayed all night about it. Oh, yeah? Yes. Oh, it was so difficult to do this. And so that entire life's work, that entire contribution is erased in a single administrative gesture. It is like paying into a retirement fund and having it taken away. When you pushed past pain, when you pushed past health, when you had malaria and you continued pioneering, when you had hypoxia and you continued your Bible studies, you found alternative ways to do it. The spiritual fraud, not in the legal sense, but in the ethical, relational, and moral sense, is a betrayal of investment and trust and devotion and labor into a system that government is saying, oh yes, we will grant you the licenses. We will grant you all sorts of perks. And so I have persons writing in on the channel saying, Matt, they are in cahoots with some of the worst governance ever to exist. And that's like, now we got to be careful, because that's saying all of government is totally corrupt and totally evil. Is it? Is it? I want to believe that there is a balance going on. I want to believe that, yes, okay, sure, there is corruption that goes on. But I want to also say that there are persons within it who have good motives. There's the struggle that's going on to keep things functional. And so, yes, it is a sad story that when we labor into a system that promises structural, stable, I don't know, reward for our advancement, or it promises continuity or protection, meaning, when you become inconvenient, non-compliant or deemed non-compliant, even if you have followed everything to the letter, or you're too insightful, you are deleted. Evidence of your loyalty is deleted. And what are you supposed to do? Smile about it and say, oh, well, I'm just going to carry on. I'm not going to get any kind of support. I'm not going to go and look towards community who can empathize. I'm not going to go and ask for help somewhere, because as soon as I do that, that's further disloyalty. That's just further control and further abuse. This is not a misunderstanding. It is a systematic procedure of self-protection at our expense. There's that saying from Network, the film Network, I'm mad as hell, I'm not going to take it anymore. Record erasure is a form of psychological punishment. It is a form of social death. And when persons are erased, or their time served, their pioneer assignments, their elder experience, their letters of appointment, their ministerial milestones, their documented service in multiple countries. Effectively, what's being said is your life's work never happened. If a secular employer did this, it would be considered retaliation, professional sabotage, abuse of authority, and destruction of career records. But no, in a closed religious system with no HR department or no external oversight, it masquerades as spiritual discipline. And I am saying it masquerades because this situation that we have a clear example of here is when a liability came up that was harming people, that is still harming people right now. But police and officials, even friends, even persons in the know, even persons who've even been booted out, it's just a religion, it's a private matter, they're allowed to do that. It's just interpersonal. And so these kind of comments, it just trivializes what it is. And in fact, it's a catastrophic identity level injury. No wonder. Norway wants to change the laws about this, or you hear about them trying to do that, saying, oh yeah, this is violence. And so unless you actually, perform about it, persons just go, what? You seem far too calm about it. We're not really convinced that you have any real conviction about what you're discussing here. Let me tell you something. Many persons like myself haven't just given a few volunteer hours or casual weekend service. They have consistently for years given up holidays, given up the means to have family. Their sacrifices are incredible. This isn't just casual weekend service or, 1 or 2 hours at a soup kitchen. It is decades upon decades of prime years of health, of safety, of cross-continental assignments, of linguistic and cultural adaptation, of humanitarian service, pastoral care, building projects, crisis management, spiritual leadership, full obedience, and your name as a representative of the institution. And that is why the psychological rupture is so deep. I've heard persons just break into absolute swearing as they break down. You're not just volunteering in this situation. You're living a vocation. And the system just erases it. Oh, it's with God. Sure. So, what happens when there is these potential liabilities, after this big performance that we've witnessed on video here? Yes, it is retaliation against persons, not because they necessarily broke any major rules, but because persons insisted on proper safeguarding. They'd seen, there's too many persons getting hurt. And so there's a bitter irony that's going on here. The moral clarity that should have been commended, that should have been rewarded, was punished. Persons practice duty of care, transparency, reporting concerns, ethical consistency, protection of vulnerable persons. And what does the institution respond with? Silence, gaslighting. We're not picking up your mail. We're just going to fight against you. We're going to put you in danger. We're going to change your assignments. We're going to actually send people to harm you. There's record erasure. That's disappeared, gone. Oh, you didn't get the point. We're going to erase something else today. And it's just a sequence of one erasure after another. And you're going, these accidents, it's an accident. Really? God. It's textbook institutional retaliation. Even if the broader society doesn't yet have the vocabulary to address it in a religious setting, that's what it is. And it's an insular system. It's a captive system. It is a government that we have said exists internationally. Tells you it's a government. And so, yes, today we have seen a performance. We've seen an act, but I would like to hope that there's conviction, there is sincerity behind it. One should feel devastated. One should feel angry, and I'll give a caveat on that. It should be righteous indignation. There should be a confusion. There should be mistrust. It's normal. And so if we are reacting similarly, or perhaps we have a far more dignified way of reacting much better than this video, I congratulate you. And I know that there are persons that are able to manage these things with tremendous dignity. And I look at them and I admire. I go, I wish I could be a fraction of your dignity. I'm attracted to that. And so, yes, I get told with a very polite AI that maybe my reaction is not disproportionate. And I go, oh, well, that's comforting. But then, of course, I also have a healthy skepticism towards the AI because it's got to try and be nice to me. So I've got to sort of wade through what is useful in the AI and try and use critical thinking there too. The psychological literature on religious institutional betrayal shows that erasure of identity, removal from trusted roles, destruction of records, and punishment for safeguarding vulnerable people with sudden social devaluation, it absolutely does produce trauma, nearly identical to sudden job termination. And let me tell you, this thing about the polite reassignment thing, it hasn't always been that. It's been, no, you've been terminated. I've had a couple of terminations in my career. All right, I've had letters of termination. You've been terminated. Thanks for your hard work, you've been terminated. What? Yeah. And so you come back and persons within that structure, they go, oh, well, you didn't do very well there. You couldn't even do well as a volunteer. You know, any fool can give away their time and give away their energy. What kind of fool are you? Not realizing that you've just been suddenly terminated with a wrongful dismissal and you've got no means to talk to anybody. You try. Nothing. No means. No means. It's just a corruption cover-up, whistleblower retaliation, exile from one's primary community. Yeah. Trauma? That, I would say, is a healthy reaction. It's a human, it's a truthful reaction. And so when the world is indifferent, it's very important to recognize that, no, look, in reality, it must not diminish one's own reality of the injury. And so to put it into plain terms, if you relate to this kind of show, this kind of discussion, this kind of video, when elders erase paperwork, they cannot erase every person you've helped. And I want to say something about that. I feel blessed. I really do. I feel blessed for the love that has unexpectedly come back to me. I am amazed at it. I am amazed that I can speak truth to that love and expose what what is it? What I consider is the worst of myself, or the most embarrassing of myself, the most vulnerable of myself, in truth. And that love comes back. So, what the weeds do, I'm giving a testimony, a positive testimony, that they cannot erase every person that you genuinely helped. Yeah, you might say that there was lies there, but you cannot erase that you helped with the truth wave. Let's put it that way. Practically. Not just a magazine or a tract in the hand, but I mean really practically. They cannot erase every person you ever helped, or every congregation you built, or every crisis that you navigated, or every lesson you taught, or every spiritual life you actually stabilized, or every humanitarian act, or every hour you gave, or kilometer that you walked in service, or every soul that you lifted, or every child you reassured, or every person you protected, or every place that you lived or that you moved to, or every culture you integrated with, or you learned a language, or you learned a culture, and every sacrifice you ever made. I'm going to say, believe in heavenly records, scrolls of deeds. Believe in Akashic records. Believe in Stephen Hawking saying no information can be destroyed. It's on the edge of a black hole. However you look at it, no. These records cannot be burned. These papers cannot be. History cannot be. Our stream of consciousness records it. And so these failing systems, they haven't created our legacy. We ourselves created. What we do now is important. What we continue to do is very, very important. We're not erased. We're still here, still breathing oxygen. I'm not dead yet. So there is a transitioning out of a false economy. That's the hardest truth. So the JW weeds, as I call them what you want. I respect that. But I sit right with saying the JW weeds, that service structure, it looked like a career. It felt like a career. It demanded everything that a career requires. But in the end, it was a closed economy. They owned the currency, they owned the records, they owned the promotions, the retirement, the meaning, and man, it's not just one abuse. There are so many abuses that are going on. And yeah, many persons were asked to invest their lives, their savings, in a currency that just evaporates the moment that they deem that you are no longer compliant, or that you are a problem, or whatever. Even if they've told you, we want you to tackle this liability, we want you to do it, or we're giving you a set of instructions and you follow the instructions, and they still erase you. I have a saying, I used to say, to God and thine self be true. And I suppose you can say that that means that the legacy continues as long as you're true, isn't it? That you can have a sense of self-conviction, not just inside somebody else's bookkeeping. And so yes, we now go through that trauma, but we're building something real, external and unerasable. And so some persons work for other volunteer services. They work towards helping people in other ways. I do that. I haven't stopped. I continue educating people. I always have. I've never stopped my pioneering hours. Never stopped it. Even when I was really sick, I found ways. I used to use alternative ways. I never gave up. I think there was about 2 weeks, even while I was in hypoxia and confused, I found all kinds of creative ways to stay functional. I would say even obsessively so. But I found other ways to care for people, and I am very pleased about it. I don't talk about all of those ways. There's ways that I look after Jehovah's Witnesses. You go, what? Why are you doing that? I'm looking after genuine persons who don't know any better. I'm happy to do that. But I also make sure that I don't just spend all my time on that. I also say, I keep to my commitment here, but I reach out to other places as well. And I'm very pleased about it. I'm so glad that it has happened. Someone said to me, Matt, why don't you put your art behind you? And I was very grateful for that advice. I thought that was good. So if there's art that you do, or if there's writing that you do, or there's metaphysical inquiry, further service, further insights, these exist outside the control of any institution. And you might find that this is the first time in your life that your work cannot be redacted. You're finally building, or maybe I should say we are finally building in open air, not in a sealed vault, managed by gatekeepers, corruptible gatekeepers. So yes, let's keep healing from institutional betrayal. I have laid it on thick in this video. If you've come this far, again, like I traditionally build in, I say thank you very much for listening. Let's keep rebuilding our identity after such erasures. Let's healthily assert ourselves without aggression. Take things down notches. Let's continue overcoming the shock of losing our lifelong careers, as we were told, which is essentially lies. And let's reclaim our spiritual authority. And navigating our ongoing cases, it helps. Or if we can't handle it anymore, it's fine. Walk away from it. It's fine. But let's look for ways to keep transforming this experience into public clarity. I'm very interested to hear comments about that. How have you integrated your vocation into your current life? If you are able to, please share with the community here. Tell me which kind of direction or vocation you want to explore next. And so, let's dignify each other in this way. Let's keep the records out there. Let's keep spreading awareness. Do so safely as we can, and do so in a way that is appealing. And if we don't have the right words, we don't have the right words. Just continue growing. Do your best. And I want to thank my friends and family and observers who've come in. Thank you very much for being with me. Really appreciate it. Remember to take this information with healthy skepticism, to also look at things with the thesis, antithesis for synthesis direction. And if there's any kind of errors or whatever like that, please feel free to mention them in the comments. Again, thank you. I appreciate you. You are the reason I am here. Go well.